All right, I'll call the meeting to order. You want to do roll call?
Yes, Tom Dester.
Here.
Roger Lang.
Here.
Renee Davis.
Here.
Dan Wolford.
You here?
Ken Houston.
Here.
Kevin Bowden.
Here.
Hope Bartlett. Here. Chris Huffer.
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here. Joe Mahalski.
Here.
And Holly Valenta. Here. And Chair, you have quorum.
All right. Let's start with approval of previous month's meeting. Any questions or comments about last 2 months ago meeting?
I move to approve.
Second. All right, moved in second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are you going, can we hear you, Dan?
Turn him up a little bit.
Do I need to speak up?
We got you.
All right, sound good.
Okay. All right, Kevin, you got a report for us?
Yes. Well, at St. Vrain, the Lions gauge this morning was 707 CFS. The 125-year historic average is 557 CFS for the state. There's currently no call on the St. Vrain, and the call on the South Platte River is Sterling number 1, which has a priority date of December 31st of 1980. Ralph Price is full and spilling, and Union Reservoirs currently has a gauge height of 27.7 feet, which is about 3/10 from being full, so it's only 200 acre feet down.
You know, just a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Full is how much?
20, in terms of gauge height,
8 acre feet.
12,728, I believe. So it's just down a little bit.
Okay.
The select St. Vrain reservoirs at the end of May were at 90% of full. At the same time last year, they were 91% of full, so about the same place where we were last year. So.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for Kevin? Okay, thanks, Kevin.
No problem.
I guess we're on the public invited to be heard, Kim.
A special presentation. Just 1 second here. Dan, can you see the presentation?
I can, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. So my name is Jamie Simo, and I'm one of the founding members of Stand With Our St. Vrain Creek, which is a citizen action group dedicated to protecting our open spaces, specifically our riparian areas. And we are going to all of our boards, going to council, trying to get our open space sales tax made permanent. So I won't go too long. I know I only have 15 minutes. It shouldn't take that long. So our Longmont open space sales tax, it was approved in 2000. It was a 0.2 cent sales tax, which means it's 2 cents on every $10 spent. You're currently paying that. It was extended in 2007, and it's set to sunset in 2034 unless it's extended further. And I'm here today to ask that you make a motion recommending to City Council that they support a permanent extension of the open space sales tax on the November 2024 ballot. So why? I'm going to move you, Dan. Okay. So this, like I said, it's not a new tax. This is not an additional financial burden on residents. There is precedent for having a permanent open space sales tax here in Colorado. Lafayette voters overwhelmingly voted to make their open space sales tax permanent in 2018. I believe it was 82%. And then Adams County in 2020 also overwhelmingly made their open space sales tax permanent. Having a permanent, reliable funding source is important given the explosive growth that Longmont has experienced in the last few years and the increasing challenges of wildfires and water scarcity due to climate change. So why now? It does sunset in 2034, so why are we asking now? That's because this is a presidential election year. That means that there's going to be a greater voter turnout, so we're hoping to get more people to actually tune into this and vote, yes or no. Longmont residents are concerned about rampant development now. If we wait, then there might not be anything to acquire or, maintain. And having a permanent revenue stream allows us to, or allows city staff to do some long-range planning for their parks and acquisitions and maintenance and such. So why are we asking for your support? So open space funds go to a number of different things, but specifically for you, it's acquiring water rights to keep water in our rivers and creeks and enhance stream flows. Healthy functioning riparian areas do provide a wildlife habitat, but it also works to decrease flooding. We had that terrible flood in 2013. So having healthy riparian areas helps stabilize banks and slow floodwaters. So in the event that we have more floods, which we probably will, open space sales tax money will help to make sure that the damage is not as bad as it was in 2013. Protecting the health of Longmont's watershed, which provides our drinking water, so specifically Button Rock Preserve, Ralph Price Reservoir up there. And it also goes toward managing our forests to protect forest health and prevent forest fires. So we have done outreach to the public. I have 962 and counting signatures on our appeal. We've done Earth Day, we're going to be doing Juneteenth, we've done Art Walk, so a number of different avenues that we've collected signatures from people. We're also going to the different advisory boards. So we've already been to Parks and Recreation, and they unanimously voted to support the recommendation to council. And we've been to Sustainability, and they also unanimously voted to support it. And we're going to Transportation Advisory Board on July 15th, and we hope to also get a unanimous recommendation. So again, we are asking that you make a motion today recommending to City Council that they support a permanent extension of Longmont's open space sales tax on the November 2024 ballot. Thank you.
Any questions concerning comments that were made?
Sure. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I hate to be a spoiler, but I don't think it's our purview to approve things like this. I just don't think it's in our business.
Oh, well, I'm not asking you to approve this. I'm asking you to recommend to City Council that they go ahead and...
I have a problem with doing that.
Okay.
Not that we wouldn't support it, but I just don't think, I think City Council needs to make the decision, and I just am uncomfortable
Okay.
making a motion to approve it. I don't want to be a, it's not
I guess I see it as you providing advice. You're advising them that this would be a good idea,
I
rather
know,
than telling them.
I know.
So.
I remember other instances, right, of other organizations coming, and I'm certainly willing to have my mind changed here, but I think at the time that the same conclusion was made in those instances as well, where the water board saw a disconnect or something between the business that we have at hand relative to kind of making recommendations that are outside the kind of things that we have on our list, I suppose. And I don't know if others recall it differently or not, but I do seem to remember at least 1 or 2 years ago or something where we came to the same conclusion, I thought, where it was decided that as individuals, we were happy to help, but as a water board, maybe not falling under that kind of umbrella. And so I don't know, Ken, Heather, anybody remember such instances?
I don't remember, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I think there was. Okay, I'll have to look back in my notes.
I don't remember because I don't think I was on the board at the time, but I'm also on the board for 10 years
course,
previous,
yeah.
and this doesn't actually seem out of character
Okay.
to things that we would be asked about. I think we are a public venue, so it's good to hear about it. So come on back, you might have so it's good to hear about it and good to talk about it.
Yeah.
I also think that, like, when we're talking about watershed health, that does spark as something that feels to me very close to our mandate. I know we spend a lot of time and energy worrying about Button Rock Preserve, and looking for public support there for various things. So to me, it does feel like a fit.
Yeah, like I said, I'm open to having the discussion, certainly.
Dan, you got your hand raised?
Sure. Again, from my perspective, I certainly see our role as advising council. This whole process in the open space program certainly has implications for the water board and for the general public. I believe it is our place to make those recommendations, especially since this group, of which I'm, part of, to provide that insight and make those recommendations. Roger, I would say it's no different than the Parks Board or the Sustainability Board or the Transportation Board. Open Space works collaboratively with these groups, and I think it's a plus across the board, whether it's any of these individual organizations or council or the community. So I do believe it is our place to make some recommendations to council.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm comfortable with doing it because I just don't think it's in our business. To come to us to ask for a recommendation on a vote, I'm just am a little bit uncomfortable with doing that.
Well, it's not really a vote, it's just getting it on the ballot so other people can vote, so the
Yeah.
community can vote on it. So we're not saying one way or the other whether, council should support it, just that it gets put on the vote so that, or put on the ballot,
Okay, let me ask you, it sunsets when,
2034.
and why are you wanting it now?
Like I said, it's a presidential election year, that's the number one thing.
So they're asking for maximal input
Right.
to interrupt.
Because if it doesn't get on the ballot this year, we still have a chance to put it on the ballot in another 4 years.
So in the instance that we were to vote in the affirmative of supporting city council putting it on the
right.
ballot, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we're not asking you personally to vote for it,
Yeah,
just.
I'm just curious about whether or not that, so at some point gets turned into water board supports the ballot measure, right? So those are two different things, right? That we support that there should be a ballot measure for the public to vote, relative to we support, hey, public, we think you should vote, right? Or vote yes for this or whatever.
I can't see that it would be any different than sustainability or Parks and Rec. I mean, that would
No, I
also
know,
be-
I'm just wondering how it would get framed. right?
Are you planning on coming back and asking for us to endorse it once it's on the ballot?
We just want it on the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're coming back with the endorsement of it on the ballot.
What's the problem of it getting on the ballot now? I mean,
Well, we're trying to shore up all of loose ends, making it basically a no-brainer for city council to do.
are you trying to obtain signatures or? Do
962
you have enough
yeah.
signatures?
This is not a formal petition, this is an appeal, so we're presenting it to city council. We're actually going to be going on the 25th to city council and say, hey, we've got this, we've got the, recommendation from these boards, do this, please do this. Please put it on the ballot. So,
And when are you presenting to city council?
the 25th,
July.
this month.
Of June.
Mhm.
So you need our answer now.
Right, yeah, it's kind of a tight turnaround to get things on the ballot. And there are other moving pieces, other things that we think that this is pretty easy sell. We have not had to twist anybody's arm to get them to sign. They are willing and ready and willing to sign. We have some city council support already, but obviously they need to make the motion to put it on the ballot.
I don't have a problem with it being on the ballot. I just have a problem saying you should vote for it, city council.
But they're not voting. They're just for them to make the motion to put it on the ballot.
So city council's only job here is to say, yes, we should put it on the ballot so the public can vote on
Correct. Yeah, we're not asking city council to vote for it. We're not asking people to vote for it. Obviously, we would prefer that they voted for it, but we just want to give them the opportunity to vote on it. And we think that, like Adams County, like Lafayette, they will overwhelmingly support it because it's not a new tax. They're already paying it. It's actually less than many other municipalities. So,
Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we recommend to city council to put this on the ballot for everyone else to vote on it.
Is there a second?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Need a half second. I'm an aye, yeah. But I will say that I would like it to be very carefully framed, right? That I don't think that it should be framed as the water board supports the ballot measure at this point, because I do think that we need a broader discussion about water board does such things. But I think it's okay to say to city council that water board is in support of the public voting on this. So that would be my only request.
I'll say aye. Sounds like we've got 4 ayes, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Motion carried.
any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Dan.
It might be worthy of a future, on our future discussion list of whether, just broader
Yeah.
comments about whether or not, because like I said, I remember a conversation before, and I can look back in my notes to see what that conversation was actually, but, so anyway, it may be worthy of chatting about such things to give us some idea of what to do in the future.
Yeah, I guess I'd say before something like this comes on our agenda, let's discuss it before it gets on our agenda.
Okay.
Okay? We have a little discussion. Okay. Very good. Any agenda revisions or submission of documents?
I have none.
Okay. Development activity, none and none. General business, we've been waiting for this for a while. Cash in lieu.
It's cash in lieu. So I'll kind of cue it up a little bit here. There's actually three items underneath the general cash in lieu today. First off is our quarterly cash in lieu review. I think we've talked in the past about the parent Windy Gap pumping project. Allotment units that Black River Power Authority put out for open bid. And they were not successful in selling all 5 units. They were successful in selling 3 of the 5.
Really? I wonder, how would you explain that?
Two of the units were, the high bidder was a metropolitan district. And that went to the Northern Board, and they're not sure they're going to allow metropolitan. And I understand why the board's not thinking they'll allow metropolitan district to own Windy Gap.
Okay, who bought the 3?
Berthoud and Little Thompson, I believe.
Okay,
And, you know, that's pretty easy. You know where the water's going.
all right,
You know, it's standard,
okay.
so to speak.
So there was obviously demand for the units, so they were unsuccessful in selling them, not because there wasn't demand, but because the board didn't approve the buyer.
The board did not approve that. And I believe the board may even think about that further, the Northern Board, but they're not there yet.
Okay.
When that happened. But at any rate, those did sell for about $40,000 a unit. As you may recall, the last time we set, 2 years ago, the most recent sale had been $30,000 a unit, or an acre foot. excuse me, 3 million versus 4 million a unit. As such, and then we've brought in the past the expected future change order costs for the Windy Gap firming project. We currently have that cost at $18,500 and about another $1,000 in change orders per acre foot. So that would bring that to 19.5, which is really not a huge increase, honestly, for a project of that scale. So between the confirmed sales for PRPA and the expected Windy Gap firming project costs, and those are actually not, those firming project costs have not been realized yet, but the project's been doing a forward look at any potential change orders, and that's really the best estimate right now. So all of those come up to 59,625 per acre foot when you add the 40 and the 19. So at this point, staff would recommend that the board consider, based upon our current criteria of using the Windy Gap firming project as the metric for cash in lieu, revising this to 59,625. One thing I have for others who ask, a lot of people obviously are interested in knowing where this might go and what it might be, including our management of the city and planning departments and developers. This is going to be pretty close. I don't expect any big jumps in the future because we are really close to feeling like we've got a real final cost for the Chimney Hollow project. And even if there's some change orders, it's not going to significantly jump it up. And I don't know of any other Windy Gap sales that will be coming out anytime soon. PRPA indicated they might wait as much as 5 years before they put those 2 units back on the market. Although it probably might be a little sooner than that, but it'll be a while before they put those back on the market. And so I would expect this price to stick for a little while, which is really what a lot of the concern was, is how often we change. So at this point, we feel the market indicates that we should be at that price.
So, you don't foresee costs down the road from the firming part of it, that like a year from now, you don't see any costs coming in, or you don't know really if they're coming in or not?
We obviously don't know. You're
I mean, there could
absolutely
be a
right.
possibility that costs will come in within a year's time that might adjust this number.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly there will be continuing change orders as you're working on a project of that massive a scale. We are done with almost everything on a reservoir project that is more unknown. At this point we know the rock isn't going to change. The foundation's done. In fact, just finished the foundation on the saddle dam as well. So the foundations are done. That's the real critical part of the dam. Never knowing what that's going to be like. The process is well established now. About two-thirds of the way up on the height of the dam, and 2/3 of the way completed with the project. So most of everything is pretty well set. So yeah.
Let me just ask you, say Flat River decides next year to sell 1 share, and 1 share sells, would we use that to adjust this?
If it were just 1 share, I think the board would want to look at what they just sold it at versus just one unit coming out. But yes, the board could certainly.
But that's really the trigger, the part of this is
Of this one.
cost of shares sold.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Actually,
trying to pin you down at one share sell, but it's something we're gonna have to look at.
Yeah.
Because that's, you've got two factors in this thing, and that's share selling and cost of completing a project.
And I would be concerned on a similar note that if they don't sell the shares for another 5 years, are we still keeping up with where costs may be? But that's maybe a problem for another time.
No, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, everything stays the same and water doesn't cost more.
That'd be
So
neat.
we're tied, well, we're
how it
tied to
works.
these two indicators, and that kind of makes you feel like it's frozen now. In a way, even though prices might be going up.
I think that's a problem for next year, but I think it's
Yeah.
good to say that we're not committing to never changing it
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Yeah,
don't say never again.
costs may go up.
Tom, what do you-
Well, I was just gonna say that, like, I think, you know, when I first came on the board, we had lots of discussion about cash and loot immediately, and I was lost the whole time practically, but nevertheless, I was trying to keep up, and I remember the language being something like the next, kind of like, something about the next reasonably foreseeable acre foot of water, right? Like, how much is that thing gonna cost, right? And the question that I have that may inform some of this discussion is, like, at what point do we what would we do if suddenly we needed, right? If suddenly we needed, you know, I don't know how many, well, 100 acre foot of water or something. I mean, it's a pretty little amount, but if suddenly we needed a whole bunch of water, some water, right? What would we do? I mean, I think to some degree, I mean, we'd probably try to conserve. We'd try to do some other things, right? And we've locked ourselves into thinking about, okay, well, what's the market price of some of this windy gap water, right? And so, and I'm fine with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm on board with that decision, right? I don't think we should start calculating how much it costs to conserve water or something like that instead. But what I'm saying is, like, at some point our mindset will shift to, like, what the next project is or something, right? That is going to secure the next allotment of water that we need into the future or something. And I'm just kind of curious, like, when we might do that, essentially, or whether legit the next time that we needed water, whether we participate in one of these auctions, right? Whether that's like a realistic sense of how we actually get water or not, right? And so I guess I'm wondering about, like, at what trigger point do we start thinking about, like, other parameters that might inform these discussions?
Well, to that point, we got, you know, you can enlarge Button Rock. I mean, there's several options if we want more, need more water. Pump back, that's another option. I don't know all that. I mean, there are things on the table that we can do if we need to get increase these sources.
But opening this discussion to those things really complicates these factors, I would imagine, right?
Well, I mean, again, this is me speaking to the history, and I wasn't here for the last big raise and the change. But prior to that, we had a different means of calculating the rates.
Yeah.
It's possible to do it different ways.
Mhm.
There is not one reasonable way to do this. There are many reasonable ways to do this, as long as we're reasonable about it and give people warning. We can do a lot of things. So I don't know that we need to worry about next year's calculation as much as we need to worry about this year's calculation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Well, I think you might be getting into this next, but as far as our scheduling, the timeframes and stuff, I think that's one thing we want to kind of firm up.
Yeah.
When and how. And in my thought process, it's going to be a year from now before we actually tie into this thing, if we firm this thing up now. The assumption, I think, is if we go ahead with this, it will actually go to city council with the idea that the effectiveness will be the first of next year. Is that correct? Everybody understand it that way?
That's the proposal. on it.
Yeah, so anyway, I might be getting ahead of myself, but anyway, so Ken, what are you looking for? For us to approve this amount, or do you want to talk about the other things, or you want to take this piece at a time?
I'd like to take a piece of that. I think we're ready, at least staff is ready to make that recommendation to the board that we set that cash in lieu price at $59,640, $625. And whatever we do with the rest of the items,
Okay, all right.
I think we can tackle that one
Well,
recommendation.
okay, anybody have any concerns, and Dan, you're still there, good, about this proposal from staff to take it to $59,625? You got any questions or comments, Dan?
No, I think it makes sense, and this is what our expenses are to do it. That's kind of been the direction that council's given us to come up with, so I would move that we, or second way, if you're already making that recommendation, Roger, but I would recommend that we approve this staff's recommendation at $59,625 per acre foot.
Any other comments for him? I'll take that as a motion, Dan.
Sure.
And somebody want to make a second on it?
Yeah? Sorry.
Is a yeah, or is a yeah?
I was-
You were comfortable with everything.
I was waiting for you to be
So,
comfortable.
okay. No, I'm good, and I want to thank staff for, I think that we've been patient in the sense of like waiting for the pieces to fall into place to have a good rationale for any number that we settled on, and I've appreciated that we haven't put the cart before the horse here. We waited for the numbers, we got them, we have an approach, we implemented it, and now I feel like
Yeah.
I'm comfortable
No,
with
I am.
the result, so.
Okay, so it's been a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. The second half part of the cash in the conversation we wanted to have is the scheduling. And so in the water board write-up, we proposed a schedule. One of the issues that we've been hearing about for some time now is unique, kind of sort of uniquely with cash in lieu. Once water board makes the recommendation, we take it to the next available council meeting. It's passed by a resolution, which makes it, basically passes it immediately, as opposed to an ordinance, which takes 2 meetings and a public notice and then a 10-day waiting period and all that. So it happens pretty quickly after water board makes that decision. And some in the development community have said, we understand that the cost goes up, but for us, we're trying, it takes us a while to bring projects to fruition, and we need time to react to that. The second half of that, kind of from the administrative standpoint, is it's common when we do, say, a rate change. If we do a water rate change, that's approved, but it's usually effective January 1st. And so the request was that we make our cash in lieu change predictable in terms of time, a little more time between the recommendation and when it becomes effective, and then also get it kind of on the schedule and in line with other types of fee changes and usually increases. Cash in lieu is really unique in that we actually many times have gone down, not just up, but we go down as well. And so if we go down, they'll probably want us to do it sooner, but going down now.
Yeah.
Same way.
Keep talking up here a little bit, Ken.
But no, one option we thought, so our city code requires water board review at least quarterly. Sometimes it's actually been more than quarterly. There was a period where CBT was just going crazy, and when CBT was one of the metrics we used, water board asked that we review it more than quarterly just to kind of track that. In this case, quarterly is more than sufficient because the windy gap in the parent project, they don't change that much. And honestly, it's been it's been a little over 2 years now since the last change, so it doesn't concern me that we have a set schedule. What we would propose is, now we can go in and change city code, that just requires 2 ordinances. But what we would suggest, at least staff would be more comfortable if we at least continue to review cash in lieu quarterly, and that way if something weird, something wild comes up, you're not saying, oh, we're gonna wait till next June. What we would propose is the normal quarterly meeting in June is when the water board would make the recommendation to council. We'd be able to take that, we'd follow, rather than, we normally kind of push it up on the agenda, get it. We have a sort of unwritten rule of 3 months to put an item on the council agenda. And we can push it a little bit. We normally push cash in lieu. But we would follow that 3-month rule, so water board would review it in June, make a recommendation. We take that to city council in September, which makes it a little easier for us to get it through the city attorney's office and get it all on the agenda and get everything done. Council would make that determination in September and make it effective on January 1st. That gives the development community a full 6 months to be prepared for it, to get either non-historical water or pay the current cash in lieu fee. It does take longer than that for development projects to move forward, but that gives them plenty of time to plan ahead. So staff is recommending that we basically review it quarterly, and we certainly can make recommendations anytime, but we would normally just review it, know where we're at, and then make a recommendation in June, council review in September, and make it effective on January 1st.
In fairness to the developers, and I'm not trying to be overly fair to them, but I think the predictability that say there's going to be a cash in lieu change is going to happen the first of the year. To me, that makes a lot of sense. I think what we've done, there's been some surprises, and people grouse about that, but that makes sense to do that. And us decide on it in June if there's going to be any changes, and just say it's going to be going forward. We're going to try and make it effective. Any changes effective the first of the year. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's reasonable, and it's basically what you're suggesting to us.
Yeah.
So, how about any other comments with what they're proposing?
I like the idea of continuing the quarterly review. I think that's actually really essential because we have, just following it this last year, it's been following it. Like we've really had a lot of information, a lot of changes, and if we hadn't had those stepwise changes, I think I would feel underinformed and a little bit like, what? Where'd this come from? So I think quarterly is powerful. I'm understanding your timeline of working back from the September meeting. September gets the January 1st and working back from that. But I'm also going to point out Scott's not here because June and summer meetings on this board are typically a little less attended. So I'm not opposed to June, but I think it's something maybe we should put an asterisk in. This is a next year problem I want to discuss this year. And that is, I think we should be thoughtful about that and see how it goes. Because if we end up with short boards, I want to make sure we have maximal boards for approving this. Approved it today without Scott here, obviously, and we've got a quorum. But I want us to keep it in mind because we're kind of putting all of our eggs in the June basket. And if 3 people go on vacation,
We don't have a meeting.
yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, it becomes, I guess, the July meeting, but it's one of those things. I think we should be smart about that. But other than that, I like it.
Yeah, I thought those were awesome points. And so everything here that was said, I completely agree with. I do very much would be adamant about still discussing it quarterly, just to kind of like, oh, okay, that's where we're at. Oh, okay, that's where, even if it's no vote, no decision, no nothing, it's just where are we right now, right? Because packing that in, packing an entire year's worth of like change or something into one discussion, especially if it's in the summer, would be way too much. And so, to be cognizant of that, right? Like even something, what would that be, the was that March, I guess? Even in the March discussion, if we've come to some kind of like, you know, we have some data points that we can work with and we're all kind of in the same, you know, same realm or something, then I don't know how remote voting or something goes if you're not going to be absent or something at a June meeting, but maybe we could, if nothing has changed since the last time we talked about it in March or something, then maybe it would be a quick little approval or something. But when it's all said and done, yeah, I think it's important to discuss periodically, but I think that the schedule that you laid out is great.
Dan, comments?
I'm on board with this process. I think the timing is good, especially as the city approximate with this June month. Cities are looking at fees and revenue streams and that kind of stuff, and certainly making the recommendation in June gives our ability to have conversation with council if needed based on that recommendation. So I like the way staff has laid out this process.
Okay. Yeah.
Chris had a comment.
Sorry?
Chris.
I was just going to say that I think that you have the option also to call special meetings if you can't get a quorum on one day. So you could do the following week or a couple weeks out or something like
Okay.
that.
So that's good to know.
So does the June timeline to then lead into a September city council meeting? Is that like, is there buffer room in there? So for
Yes.
example, if we didn't vote, if we weren't able to vote on it until July, you'd still be able to get it on
Yes.
the September
Yeah.
city council
Yes.
meeting. So I mean, there's a little bit of like leeway or something there.
Yeah.
So that would be another.
Yeah, and the other thing, Ken, goes without saying, but the firming thing, keep us apprised of costs and stuff, because that's probably gonna be the lever that adjusts it, in my mind. If there's no sales for a year, there's no sales, but you're gonna have to keep us up to date on that, so.
Yeah, no, we'll absolutely keep you updated on any, who know, you know, other entities may do something.
Okay.
None that I know of right now, but yeah,
No, but hey,
certainly.
we got another year to look at things as they, you know, happen, so. You want a motion on this?
I don't need a motion unless you want to change code for
No.
any reason.
No, I don't think changing code is not worth this.
That's never fun, I get
Okay.
It's
it.
not about
All right.
Christians.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So
We agree with what you're saying.
gives me the direction I need on that, so thank you very much. And then the final item was our overall cash and lieu review process. I just wanted mostly to give you an update. So what we're gonna do in each one of our cash, every quarter, we're gonna, or any other month that we bring this item before the board, we're gonna kind of stack the communication. We're gonna replicate the information that we have already given you so that when we're done, we have a full and complete picture, mostly for those that are, you know, not on the board or not in here. We feel this is going to be a really good kind of historical perspective and get a lot of it. So we don't have much new information this month because we're at a point where we need to get some studies done and get a bunch of research done. For example, I'd like to get the actual money we've spent for cash and lieu all through the program, because I do hear some different, not every, people would like to know what the money was spent on, not just what did we collect, but what was it spent on. And so we'll continue to do that. We're going to get additional information, you know, what are some of the other cities. I never like to follow what other cities, you know, what other people are doing. It's unique to Longmont, but it's still good to have that information. So as we put those studies together, we'll continue to feed that into the water board packet and into water board. And again, we're hoping to get most of this all together by early next year. And if water board wants to make any changes in the program at that point, or recommend any, we can do that. But
You got any concerns that somebody will say, we gave you about 12 questions to answer, and you're adjusting the cash and lieu before you answered all our questions?
I don't, because we're making the recommendation based on our current criteria, And honestly, well, I've been around about once every 10 years. We change the criteria. We had, the last 10 years, we had a criteria that was just the firming project, because that's where the money's going to right now. It was a reasonable criteria. We changed it now, I'll call it in the 2020s. Prior to 2010, about 2010, for about 15 years, we used CBT primarily. But CBT, as y'all know, took off. And so it doesn't bother me that we do or don't have some other things. I think we're very, very well founded in the criteria we're using right now, and I think it's a very good criteria. Again, because that's where the money's going. Right now, cash in lieu is going to pay for the bonds that we've issued.
Well, you've got to sell it, so.
Yeah, I think we can sell that. Yeah, I think it's a very good, very.
No, I think it's fundamentally very solid what we're doing. Just the thing, all these questions that, like should there be cash in lieu going, it kind of bothers me a little bit where that's going, but anyway, I just don't want, I hope not, somebody saying, you didn't complete all the discussion that we gave you.
Yeah, I think like goes
So,
on, so.
We'll see.
Okay. Good, and so that's all I had on cash in lieu.
I had a question actually. The document here is sprinkled throughout is it has been expressed or some other diplomatic passive voice type language. Is there a universal entity that we can fill in the blanks with there? Like who is expressing these things? Sometimes it's developers, I would imagine, sometimes it's others.
Actually, it came down to us from the city manager's office, and I'm going to say it wrong, the city has a, I can't even think of the name of the title, person that's kind of looking over the sugar mill, the entire larger sugar mill, they call it STEM, project.
The development coordinator.
Development coordinator, there we go. That's a good name. That person was very concerned about what cash in lieu would mean to the sugar mill project. Why? Because Great Western Sugar, when they were going bankrupt, sold their water off. So you're uniquely sitting with a very large parcel of property with no water rights at all sitting on it.
Got it.
And yes, it will impact them a little more until you look at what it actually costs per unit, and that's some of the information we'll bring back to the board, but it's not much. I mean, the per unit cost is still, even though cash in lieu may be in a certain area, it's still far less than many other places.
But is that, I'm sorry, I know.
Actually, can I
Of
just
course,
second
yeah.
what you started with, and that is, I'm reading this and there's a lot of vague people out there saying things, like staff is curious. And I would really like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting, they can come here and say it. Because I have to come here and say it with my face and my name tag, and whatever diplomacy I may have. But so when you brought it up, I was really glad because it kind of checked my hide. Because I would like to know who's saying what and be responding to it. I'm okay with that, but they need to also kind of own it.
It helps with just understanding perspective.
Perspective and
like I want to know who it is so that I know their viewpoint and I can say who they are, right? Like in a way, well, this group of people says this, and this group of people said, if there's multiple viewpoints here, this group of people says this, and this one has a contrary opinion, and I want to weigh my perspective against what, where they're coming from, you know? And so, that's why I brought that up. I'm interested because you had brought it up, Ken, the cost per unit that you calculated, that was because I have to sit down and actually do a calculation myself because I'm like that hands-on that or in that way, I guess. But that cost per unit is supported in a way because there were historical water rights on these pieces of property, though, right? So, like in their unique situation, it's not going to be $2,200 a unit or $2,300 a unit. It'll be much bigger because they don't have any, right? So it'd be, it'd be a whole lot higher, given that 70% of the deficit paid by cash and lieu.
We could bring in some estimates on
Yeah.
that, so, based
So-
upon zoning, we could bring in estimates of what it would cost per unit.
But a large majority of it was paid by cash and lieu and not with historical. Is that what I'm saying? Anyway, when it's all said and done, yeah, I'd like to see a little, or even some examples, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would it be in this particular instance, right? Like, what is the cost per unit in that particular instance?
Yeah, it'd be really
Is it
easy to say-
2,000 or is this 10,000?
If they have no water at all,
Yeah.
and the easiest thing for a developer is to write a check. To be real honest, that's why they like cash and lieu.
Sure.
So a developer, if they have no water and it's 3 acre-feet per acre, it's 150. Well, now if it goes up, it'll be 180,000
Yeah, 180,000.
per acre, and you divide it by, anywhere from
Density.
15 to probably 50 to 100. I don't know what's the high density.
Yeah.
I think 77, I think, is one of the highest.
77 units per acre.
Units per acre.
So,
Stacked on top of
a higher density brings that number way
Yeah,
down.
of course.
Single family, yeah.
Okay.
But we can bring that, that's real easy to
Yeah, sure.
bring that into, it helps put it into perspective. Yeah, absolutely. What we were trying to do here was just, what actually happened
Yeah,
in the last
no,
10
it's-
years.
It's so good. These types of like
But
little
these
data
kinds of
insights are
things,
perfect. So.
We'll bring all of that in. Be happy to do it.
Can I just interject a couple things? One thing was that I wanted to say, yes, that we are seeing much higher density coming in now than we've ever seen in the past. So comparative to 10, 20, 30 years ago, the cost per unit is changing. Just based on the type of development coming in, so it may self-adjust. The average is probably not a bad average that's being shown. The other thing that I just wanted to interject too is that staff here is part of the city, and we're all part of the city, and our job is to represent all the different parts of the city. Not to say that anybody couldn't come in and speak,
Right.
and that we would encourage them to come in and speak, but we really are here to represent all of the different views at this point.
Speaking of density, I assume the developers are living within the parameters we set for density.
Yes, they're usually on the lower end of all of the spectrum. They have not pushed up to the higher end of the spectrum in any of the zoning areas. Is that what your question was?
I was just kind of curious about if the density is increasing considerably over what it has been. Our guidelines, I would hope, are they pushing against our max on density allowed? They're not.
No, in 2016 when we adopted Envision Longmont, that changed all of the density requirements. So there have been, I guess I don't want to say several, there have been projects that have come in that were not dense enough, and City Council has turned them away and told them to relook at what they've done to bring in more density to meet whatever their zoning requirements were. I don't believe there's anybody that's come in that's come close to hitting the maximum densities.
Okay, any other comments for Ken about what we discussed?
That's great. I appreciate that input, and we'll continue to bring all this information back. Keep looking at it.
All right, very good. Okay. Back with this exchange agreement.
Yeah, we have before you today a reasonably standard exchange agreement. As the board may recall, our charter doesn't allow us to sell water without a vote of the public, but our charter does allow us to exchange water rights. And we don't exchange water rights too often, but we occasionally do. The last big one I recall is Golden Ponds. We exchanged our Copeland Lake facility, the reservoir itself, not all the property, for half interest in Golden Ponds with the St. Vrain and Left-Hand Water Conservancy District. We owned Independent Reservoir, which is just south of McCall Lake. We exchanged that for some CVT water and got a really good deal out of that, because that was right before CVT went up. But what we have today is when Boulder County Fairgrounds purchased the property for the fairgrounds, that property was historically irrigated out of the Beckwith ditch, and so the county got both the land and 1.66 shares of the Beckwith ditch. But today it's either the fairground complex itself and the parking lot. So there's that hasn't been irrigated for 30 years, but they do still have those shares sitting there. Longmont, you may recall, we just last year completed a change case for the bonus ditch, which diverts out behind Best Buy and over Dickens Farm. We completed that change case, and our next change case we're planning on doing is the Beckwith ditch itself. We owned, in the late 1980s, we owned half the Beckwith ditch shares, and we changed those shares at that time. And then we've been assembling shares since then as most of the south side of Longmont has grown. We now own essentially the entire ditch, with the exception, there's the Boulder County shares. There's one share owned, believe it or not, by the Safeway store over here. Just kind of got left on that property. It annexed like in the mid-1960s, and it was left on that property. And then there's two small shares owned by developers who purchased them for non-historical. So essentially the Beckwith ditch will no longer divert water down the ditch. It hasn't actually diverted water in probably over 10 years. So that's no change there. For Longmont to be able to own the last little remnant shares and take the entire ditch through water court is very beneficial to us. In addition, there's been a long-standing community desire to get fish passage, by eliminating the diversion structure there at Golden Ponds. You're able to get fish passage and make a more natural channel through there. And changing all the water out of the ditch will help us do that. So we've been having a conversation with Boulder County. Boulder County has a bunch of open space east of Longmont, south of, well, east of Costco. They're out to County Line Road 1. They're a little water short on that, and that's actually fed by the bonus ditch. So the county's really interested in getting a little bit more bonus ditch water for those properties, and of course we're interested in getting the Beckwith water for us. That gives the county wet water they can use on their open space, which is a benefit to them. So it's much more valuable to them to get the bonus. For us, the Beckwith is actually much more valuable to us. We were able to change the bonus shares, and we can use them downstream, but they couldn't be moved upstream because of their location on the stream and the extended period of time in summer when there's a zero flow that they're on return flows. For us, the Beckwith ditch is like the senior ditch, other than one little tiny ditch out east. It's basically the senior ditch, so you always want the senior ditch. So for us, we get a more senior ditch. We're able to move at times some of the Beckwith water up to our plants because it exists west of Longmont as opposed to the bonus, which is east. So we get more functional water, we get more senior water right. And we are able to further some of our community goals with protecting the river. So we're doing just a straight acre foot for acre foot exchange with the county, but we do need to go and get resolution approved by the city council to approve an exchange. The county has already agreed to it. We're all ready to sign. Just go through the approval processes. So staff would make a recommendation, the board forward a recommendation to council to approve an exchange with the county for Longmont to get the Beckwith shares.
So this is beneficial to the county and it's beneficial to us.
It is, yes. It's really a win-win for
It's a
both.
no-brainer, it sounds like.
Yeah, we think so.
But
Just out of interest, how many of the goals that you outlined there or the benefits that we receive, there's a couple of other people still on the Beckwith ditch, it sounds like, so you said that.
There would be 3 others, but 2 of them are developers, so they're just waiting to move their development process through, and then they'll dedicate it to the city. Anyway.
So okay.
So there's just the 1 share, and we're trying to talk to Safeway, but that's not.
I was
You can
wondering-
imagine, that's not as easy as it sounds.
But like, any of the things that you have planned impeded by the fact that Safeway has that share still?
No, because it's not real clear, but it's a legal precedent that the ditch company can substitute water in intra-ditch. Longmont happens to own the South Flat Reservoir, which is, you're driving down Hover Road, it's the reservoir on the west side, just south of the creek. If you look out to the west, you can see where the South Flat Reservoir, we own the water rights in that. We would put water for that 1 share. Of course, they can't use it because it's a parking lot at Safeway. They have A, nowhere to irrigate, and B, no way to get the water from the ditch to their property. That was all taken out by development 30, 40 years ago. But if something happened, we could pump out of that. And the ditch company said that's what, ditch company plans the head gate, the diversion dam for the head gate at Golden Ponds is rapidly deteriorating. And the company's not gonna pay $1 million to rebuild that diversion structure. So the company says anybody wants water downstream, they're gonna get it out of the South Flat Reservoir anyway. So that's pretty well determined. So yeah, we're not worried about any other, the county fairgrounds was the only one that we wanted to make sure we cleaned up at this point.
any other questions? Dan, any comments?
You're muted.
No, Roger, no questions, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So you want to make a motion?
So put forward a motion that we recommend to City Council that they approve the exchange agreement as written, I guess.
Is there a second?
If you could make it in substantially the form.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I tried to be too specific. So in substantially similar to what is written.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Items from staff. Alex?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I apologize, Alex had a personal issue come up and not able to attend the board meeting today, so I'm gonna pinch hit for
Where,
him.
Alex?
I'm Alex today.
Okay.
So what we wanted to do, we've been asked to look at the possibility of increasing a little bit on our water rental program. And to be real honest, we're going through a rate study this summer, so anytime there's a rate study, is there other ways of offsetting some of the some of the rate increase. We know there will be a rate increase, primarily driven by all the stuff Joe and Holly's doing. A lot of work we need to do on the system to keep it, maintain that asset. And certainly good that we do that. We've been asked to do that. What we try to do is kind of give ride up the flavor. There's a number of different areas that we do water rental. We work with the school district. We have a historical leaseback program for properties that annex, dedicate their water, but don't develop right away. We have city-owned properties. But really the majority, the biggest dollars we get is what we call our long-term water rental, water supply agreements. And that is because the cost we charge for that is set by a rate study, which will happen with this other rate study. But it's in the right now it's $642 an acre foot, compared to, say if you're some of the other programs where it's tens of dollars per acre foot. And that's primarily because most of the other water is not fully consumable. And
Not what?
not fully consumable water. And so the long term and the biggest value is the long term. It is mainly used by people who have augmentation plans. And when you have an augmentation plan, you have to be able to prove to the state that you have water for however long it takes your impact to the stream. Somebody pumps a well, it might take anywhere from 1 year to 5 years for that impact to finish hitting the stream. And so you have to show the state you got water 5 years out. And so that's where our programs come in and very valuable. We've been looking at the programs we have, and one difficulty we have, or two reasons, but one difficulty we have in moving forward with much more, and certainly staff is going to go out and try to look at the possibility of gaining additional water rental to help offset the impact of rate increases. But there's a couple areas that make it a little more difficult for Longmont to do. Now, the authority to lease rate falls underneath our city charter, 11.1, which basically allows us to lease water. But also in code, we have a few restrictions that I wanted to just discuss with the board. We've not talked with our legal department yet, and I didn't even I wanted to get the reaction and input from the board before we talk about these two things. They are policy decisions we made in the past for very, very good reasons, but I guess we want to find out if we still want to continue that policy. The first is we have an area, we call it the Water Supply Review Zone, and that's basically an area, Highway 66, I-25, County Line Road, right here by Longmont, and then Highway 52 on the south. That area it was urbanizing. Some of it is Longmont planning area that was being urbanized by other entities, which was in conflict with our planning, our comprehensive plan. And so in the past, we said we're not going to lease any water in the water supply review zone or to any entities who supply water into the water supply review zone. I think that's a very good one, and I would suggest in terms of the zone that we keep that. We shouldn't lease any water in that area where we want to develop through our comprehensive plan. The way it was written, though, is that it's to any entity. The thinking was, well, yeah, if we rent it to an entity and they say, yeah, we're going to use it down by Gun Barrel, that really frees up other water of that entity that they might move into the water. That's why we wrote it fairly strictly. But the effect is, ironically, left-hand, or Little Thompson Water District serves into that area. Central Weld serves Firestone, which serves in that, or grows into that area. Left-hand Water District serves in the south part of that. When you draw a box around, so Little Thompson goes clear up to Arkins, which is by Horsetooth Reservoir. Left hand goes clear down to Louisville, Lafayette, Boulder on the south. Central Weld goes out to Kersey, east of Greeley. And so basically, if you draw, we can't lease to anybody from Horsetooth River to Broomfield, from Kersey, east of Greeley to Continental Divide, which has really limited our ability to enter any leases. So my first question would be, that I believe, I understand that policy, but we may want to consider changing it to, we can't serve in that water supply review zone. But if Little Thompson came and said, hey, we need water up by Johnstown, would we then be able to lease water if we can show that it was not going in that water supply review zone? That would open up an area. I'm not worried, and we're not advocating to do that or not to do that, other than that would open up the ability to lease water.
What are our major leases that we have today? I mean, significant ones.
Really honestly, there's one big one, and that's the one on the next issue, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
It's called A&W Water, actually was here in Longmont, the principals lived here in Longmont. They operate out of Fort Lupton, and they have a number of wells on the South Platte River that they have to augment because they're pull out of priority. And so they lease water from us, goes down the St. Vrain, hits the Platte River over by Platteville, which is high enough up for them to get credit at Fort Lupton. That's about a 600 acre foot, and it's on the range of like $400,000 a year. But it expires in 2028, and well, I'll go ahead and go on the second issue we have in our or second language we have in our code is that we won't lease to any oil and gas interests. Now, the A&W Water, we know they're augmenting their wells, so you could technically argue it's not going to oil and gas, but their wells they pump, some of that water does go to oil and gas, and we know that. And so by the current language, it says, we can't lease to oil and gas, it didn't apply to existing, we didn't have to try to get out of that lease, but it applied to an extension of the lease. So in 2028, we will not be able to extend that lease, and that's a hit of about $400,000 to the water fund. We'll have to increase water rates by $400,000 if that lease goes away.
And why is it that we can't do that?
Because they serve the oil and gas.
Yeah, but when was that decision made that we wouldn't lease to oil and gas?
Well, that's been on the books for probably at least 10 years.
Really?
It's been on there for a while.
Okay. Council decision, they're saying?
Yeah, council made that decision.
Okay.
They directed staff to bring an ordinance saying that we can't lease oil and gas. And that, and I guess what we're asking for is input, should we just not worry about it, leave that in place? Or should we consider, you make a decision and then 10 or 15 years later, is that decision still pertinent? Is it still a good decision?
Well, and there's this leapfrogging process with the water, right? I mean, we're not providing water directly to the oil and gas folks. but yet we're providing water to somebody that does provide water to the oil and gas folks, right? So, and I mean, the way that the policies are written here, I don't know if they're vague enough that you kind of squeeze in with providing the water to the people that provide the water, you know? Or, I mean, but, I mean, there's a spot here, provisions requiring accounting of such water to prevent such use, right? I mean, that seems like, sorry, but if you're providing water to somebody that's providing water to somebody, you need to account for that, and you're responsible for the end place, or the end use, right?
Yeah.
And, so yeah, something would have to be done, I think, in order to continue with this particular agreement. And I was gonna ask who, is that falls into this long-term lease category that's here?
It does, yeah.
So that's 400,000 out of the 900,000 that comes in?
Yeah, it's about half of it, yeah. Another big chunk of that money, 300,000 or so, is Central Colorado Water Conservancy District, and they're like 98% ag water. Their program is to augment out of priority agricultural wells. So we're okay with our lease with them, and that won't go away. So
Does A&W, their how much of their portfolio, let's say, is related to oil and gas?
oh, it gets really
Large.
squirrely that way. So when we first made the lease, or probably the first half of the lease, it was probably 90% oil and gas. The water industry realized the oil and gas folks had money, so they charged pretty high rates, which drove the oil and gas industry away from water providers to ditch irrigation ditches. They originally had to take, in 2005 to 2010, they had to take bulk water out of fire hydrants. They needed that clean of water to make their fracking fluid. Then they learned how, I assume just probably a potable treatment, an on-site treatment system. They learned how to get raw water and use that. And then they even went further to where, so then they were leasing a lot of effluent out of the cities and like Longmont. Then they went to ditch companies, and the ditch company says, yeah, we want to make money. So the ditch companies would lease them the water out of their ditch, and then by exchange CBT water and use that to do the ditch. Because you can't use CBT in oil and gas outside the district, but you can use the ditch water, arguably. I mean, it got quite a ways down the road.
That's weird.
So the oil and gas industry then started developing a lot of their, so there isn't as nearly as big a market for the oil and gas industry because they've developed their own water supplies. They needed it. They needed water. So they started building augmentation programs, buying water rights, and so they have quite their own system set up. But yeah, so that provision, and we're not arguing to eliminate. I think that's our community would not probably be happy if we eliminated that. But
Well, are you basically saying we're trying to reduce our lease agreements?
no, we've been asked to increase, see if we can increase it. And what I'm doing, and we're going to try to do that. But there's three big things that make it hard for us to do that, and I want to highlight all three of those and see if any one of the three we want to relax a little, and maybe none. Maybe we're fine. Our job is to provide water to the citizens of Longmont, not anywhere else. So if we want to keep it the way it is. We don't have a very nearly as big or robust water rental program as we used to, partially because.
But as we change our lease agreements or decrease the amount we lease, we're talking about impacting the rate?
Yes, if we don't, the lease of that water helps keep water rate increases down.
I mean, naturally, wouldn't we wanna keep the rates down?
Yes, that's what I've been asked to do.
Okay, well,
And that's what I'm
you
trying
know,
to, that's why I wanna talk about
I
it.
don't know anybody wants rates to be in, you know, we've hit water rates pretty significantly over the last, whatever number.
Yeah, last 20 years or
And
so.
my take would be if we have a choice of doing something to minimize the increase in water rates, why not?
Okay.
I'm just,
But I think Ken's about to outline 3 things that say, here's the reason that there's gonna be complications towards that goal. Is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
these 3 things. And the last one is really our own, that's between staff and water board. We used to do 20-year leases, and we decided that was a little, how can any of us look out 20 years? So we changed that in conversation with the water board to 10 years. And so we haven't been entertaining any leases longer than 10 years.
when did you decide that?
We probably decided that in 2005,
Yeah.
2000 to 2005.
Okay.
Water board, you know,
Okay,
had
all
that
right.
conversation.
All right.
But it's just cleanup. I mean, there's no code, we don't change code or anything like that. The longer the lease is, the more people out there who are on augmentation plans that really need the water way out, they would be more interested in a longer term lease.
So it's 10 years is the max.
Yeah, 10 years is the maximum
Okay.
we'll entertain
All right.
right now. Our city code used to say 20 years, but, or city charter, it was amended, it now is 30 years. And I don't think I'd be comfortable with a 30-year lease, but for the right lease, we may want to consider a 10-year. Again, it wouldn't happen unless the water board looked at it and said, we're comfortable with that, and how we come up with it. But so that's the 3 things, is the water supply review zone, the no leasing to oil and gas, and limiting it to 10-year leases. So if we want to relax any one of those, not asking for a recommendation today in terms of, I want to go to council and ask them about that, but if we want to relax any of those, then we would work, we'd look at the language that we would need to change. Other than 10 years, we can decide that right now. But, for the other 2, we'd need to look at the language, work with the legal department to come up with the revised language, and then we would bring that back to water board for a review and recommendation to council. I didn't want to go through the whole effort if there was not an appetite for relaxing any of that.
Well, what's staff's position? You think we should just leave it the way it is? You know, we need some input here. Ken.
I would at least review it. I really would. Knowing that that is the biggest impediment to leasing the water. Especially, you know, again, I would not get rid of the water supply review zone. I would just better define it. That's in my mind, that's the big one. The oil and gas, I don't know. I just don't think the community would have an appetite for changing that yet. There's a lot of stuff going on with oil and gas still right now at the state level, and a lot of issues. So I guess for me, I would better define the water supply review, narrow it down to be only the zone. I would probably leave oil and gas as is, and the 10 years, I'd say, yeah, we would at least entertain some. Then don't have to say, yeah, we'll accept it, but if we were a little more free on that, I could, if it came up, and I won't guarantee it will come up, but that's kind of where I would be at. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on it.
Well,
Everyone,
if we don't change anything, is that a big issue?
Not a huge issue. I do believe it will have great impacts. We won't be able to renew the A&W lease, so we won't be able to get similar leases like that.
which you said was 2028, which my goodness gracious, it's like just 3 years from now. essentially.
Yes, it's within-
Between that.
The reason our water rate studies are usually, 4 to 5 years out. What we're setting, we usually set, I think it's 3 or 4 years, 4 years, I think.
Generally, 4 years we set, and we're looking at a kind of a 20-year window, and we're looking at the rates for expected expenditures. We would definitely put the A&W lease.
Yeah, it puts it right in the process.
I was around for the location area situation, remembering it all, and I've got to speak to it and say that we did actually intentionally define that as a mechanism of not letting somebody do a switcheroo and just move their water. And so I'm not wild about that. I mean, I think the oil and gas for me is kind of a, yeah, no thanks. No to change there. But I'm not feeling wildly excited about changing the review area either, and the firmness of that definition. Kind of a stick in the mud. And, I love low rates, or I love riding herd on the rates, but this is one of those cases where it's kind of like money for values. And that's where that one aligns with me. I will say that the length of the lease, if we wanted to go for longer, I would definitely entertain longer leases. I'd be open with that. And that's something water board can definitely do. That's, I don't think a high regret. I think that would be a low regret change.
I wasn't around for the water supply review zone discussion, and I'm still a little lost, admittedly, about exactly what those restrictions are and what the rationale for them are. And so I'd like to maybe chat about those a little bit more at some point in the future, to kind of further clarify this discussion for sure. I do foresee, I could foresee a situation where even if we said, well, water yes or no within a particular zone, then we run into the same problem that we're running into with the oil and gas folks, which is just, well, we give some people some water and then they displace that water for other water elsewhere, and now we're back in the same boat that we were in, right? Or does it fit with the heart or the kind of soul of a particular regulation or restriction or policy, when people are just kind of moving stuff around anyway and kind of rearranging to kind of put up appearances or something. My biggest question though is like, what collectively all of the leases combined, especially the long-term leases that apparently are more at question here, how much does that offset rates, right? So, if I pay, I don't know, whatever the number is, $40 on my water bill or something, and do I pay without any of the leases at all? Do I pay 38 or do I pay 42 or do I pay 65? Like, is there a way to get that number, right?
Yeah, we can get you the exact number.
Yeah.
I'm gonna generally say it's about $1.
$1 per year or $1 per month?
$1 per.
Bill?
No. It's about $40 million for our overall water budget, and this is about $1 million.
I mean, so
$1 a month, I guess.
So the amount, to me, and I know that these things add up, right? But like, the amount of effort that you put into a discussion is commensurate to the amount of impact that the result will have, right? And so, if it's 1% of your bill, if it's 5% of your bill, if it's 50% of your bill, right? Like, then I would scale the amount of effort that we put into this, I'd say, to that, to whatever that is, I guess. But
And keep in mind, of that approximate $1 million, half of that will still be in, so
right.
the actual incremental part is probably even less, probably 50 cents.
But are there changes that you'd like to make? I mean, if we don't change anything, what's the downside of that?
I don't think there's any downside at all. I mean, other than certainly a slight decrease, most likely decrease. It doesn't mean if we push, we can't fit in these criteria and still lease. You know, we first off have to have that it's surplus water. You know, we don't want to lease anything we need. It's a little hard to say for sure. Yeah, there isn't, I don't believe there is a downside other than the slight, you know, other than a slightly lower ability to lease water.
Are there other leasees, or potential leasees out there that would replace our current leases? So like, do you have people calling you all the time and you're like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more leases available? Or is it?
No,
is there
we used to
demand?
get a lot of calls, but we haven't got calls for quite a while. We would be very hard pressed to lease all 600 acre feet of B&W water in Lane 28. Very hard. You know, on the margin, I think we could lease a bunch of it. But just don't know. We just wanted to do, you know, our best effort.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we don't want, you know, we really felt this was a policy issue of what the community wants, and we feel this is what the community wants, these restrictions. But other than the tenure, we might want to think if the board's okay, doesn't mean we have to enter into the agreement, but we might bring in a slightly longer than 10-year period if somebody wants it. I know Central would like longer than 10 years.
There was an issue with that with, I might get my acronym wrong, was it a PRPA or whatever? What is it? So, I'm sorry. The power folks that we have a lease with, right? It was a longer lease. It was
Excel
Todd,
Energy.
yeah, okay.
Fiasco.
Yeah, Fiasco, sorry.
Yes.
Todd's thing, for a long time, I remember him always mentioning the length of this lease. And there was, I can't remember exact details, but we do have something there that was a contention.
Yes, we have that exchange agreement as part of our water supply
It's an exchange
portfolio.
agreement. Okay.
The lease was a 75-year lease, entered into about 20 years ago, so now it's about a 50-year lease, but it has a 15-year opt-out. Either
Okay.
party
Okay.
can opt out with a 15-year notice to the other. So Todd's, and I totally understand what he's saying. That's really a 15-year lease.
Right, yeah, you're right, right.
And
Because it was deemed as a benefit to us.
yeah.
And so we needed to.
Yeah, it's really
Try
one of the
and-
leases
so that-
an exchange,
Yeah.
and we exchange, they give us CBT water, we give them effluent
Right,
out of the
right.
plant, and
Okay.
so,
And in our supply plan, we were counting that as supply.
As real water.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
it really
that's,
is 15-year water.
right.
Yeah.
And
okay.
that was the contention, is how should it be counted?
Got it.
Not, was there something inherently funky about the
Yeah.
lease?
Okay.
And,
Or the
and,
duration. I mean, it sounds like the duration, but it was mostly about whether or not it was supply.
Whether it was real water.
and a lot of that water comes out of Union Reservoir, and so we still have that, whether it's the effluent or the Union Reservoir, we still have that water. And we could do a different type of exchange, or we could build a pumping pipeline. And so we would, you know, part of the thought is it doesn't go away, the water doesn't go away. We just, a lot harder for us to use it. We'd have to figure out how to use that water in our system, you know, to exchange it up from Union to be able to use it at the plants. So, anyway, hopefully
So
That's
where
our-
are we? You know, I'm still, if nothing changes, it's not gonna be the end of the world, or are you
No, it's
looking for
not.
some?
Not at all. I'm kind of hearing a little okay if we bring something in slightly longer than 10 years. I'll try not to do 20 or 30, but, you know, but other than that, I think if everybody's okay with keeping the policies the way they are, we'll go out, we'll see if we can lease more water, and if we can't, we can always look at it again. You know, we'll find that out.
Dan, you've been listening to all this, you still there?
Yep.
Any comments?
No, I'm good with much of this. I know there's certainly advantages to the tenant to have those longer leases, especially when they have property or capital equipment investments on those properties. So I'm good with longer.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with something longer than 10
A
years.
bit longer, okay.
I mean, you just cited Fiasco. I mean, that's a long lease. I think it's in favor of, I mean, good for both of us. So I don't have a problem with that, but if we don't change anything else, I don't have a problem with that either.
Okay. Cool.
Anybody else? All right. Did you get an answer from us?
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Did you get an answer from
I
us?
did, yes. No, I absolutely did. Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
exactly what I wanted. Was just the conversation is very helpful to me.
All right. Hope, are you still here? Boy, you've been awfully quiet today.
I know. You've been good, been behaving. Do you want to hear from the special guests first so that they can have their like full presentation? Because I can present at a different meeting if you'd rather.
Say that again.
Do you want to hear from our special guests first? And then we can postpone my presentation. I want to make sure that they have enough time to
Well, what do
for
you think?
conversation.
Do you think they should go first?
I do.
Hey, I don't see anybody arguing with that.
Okay.
Why don't we do that?
If you guys are ready.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. So yeah, Heather's pulling up the quick presentation here. So I'm Joe Mahalski, Engineering and Operations Administrator, and Holly Valenta, Senior Civil Engineers here also. We're just gonna give a couple of updates on a couple of projects. So I'll be talking about the forebay at the Nelson Flanders Water Treatment Plant. Holly will be talking about the North St. Vrain Pipeline Rehab. Just a couple of challenging projects that we're taking on right now. So just a couple of pictures you can see here. So on the left is a picture of the reservoir, the forebay. Nelson Flanders is kind of to the lower right corner of that same picture, the treatment facility. So basically the forebay was put into operation when Nelson Flanders was constructed in 2005, and it's never really been taken down since that time. And we started to notice some algae coming into the plant. Not too much taste and odor issues, more operational issues. It was clogging some of our equipment. So when the facility was constructed, there is a forebay bypass pipeline that goes kind of along the south side of the reservoir and into the plant so that we can take it down. Again, it's just different operations than what we've been used to out there, so it was operationally challenging. We don't have the storage of that forebay, and that forebay also allows us to pace the flow coming into the plant a lot easier. It mixes all of our raw water sources, so it's just a really nice feature. So basically for the past 2 months we've been in this bypass to drain it, and you can see on the right hand side there just a snapshot of some of the algae that we were seeing in there. It pretty much covered the entire bottom, so it was fairly extensive, and it's been dried out now a couple of months. But in the meantime, up along the north side of the forebay, there's a supply ditch there. And there's also a feature of the forebay, a dam structure, a tow drain, and that tow drain is supposed to intercept any leakage, any water, and give us some sign that there's some sort of an issue with the forebay. We do have some seepage up on that north side. We've had it for probably the past 10 years, but there wasn't anything coming through that tow drain. So even in the yearly inspections by the state dam engineer, something to keep an eye on, make sure that we weren't saturating the northern side of that dam slope or anything, and we were carrying that water away, but we didn't think it was coming from the forebay. Well, since this was the first time we took it down, and since it was first operated, that seepage did go away, so we notified the state engineer, and we're currently working on solutions. If you go to the next slide. So there were a couple of holes, and And you can see the one on the right, fairly significant. Basically the design of the 4-bay, there was a 16-inch clay liner when it was first constructed. So you can see that 16 inches is on the right-hand side, that shovel handle and everything, it's probably 3 to 4 feet down. And then on the left, it doesn't really show. That one's not quite as deep, but a couple of feet deep, where it definitely goes through the clay liner. So we don't know if these are the only issues. We're kind of in the process of investigating it with our consultant. But this is just a big challenge for the operations up there right now, dealing with without being able to use the 4-bay for all the reasons we have been using it. And we'll see. We're actually out there tomorrow to investigate these holes, dig to see what the underlying subgrade is like and how the water is being carried away. There's some short-term improvements we're looking at making too, so that we can put it online in the short term that the state engineer is okay with. So we'll probably be providing more updates as we get further along with this, but just one of the challenges where we took it down for algae and we found that there were the causes for some of the leaks out there were from this 4-bay, so got to take care of them.
So how long has this been out of commission?
2 months now. 2 months, and so again, not the most ideal time period to be doing this, with the runoff and everything that's, the snow melt, our peak demands, obviously going through the summertime, but it's also, we're learning a lot about the facility's operations, what it can do. We just have to be more in tune on a daily basis of, turbidities and everything coming in from the raw water sources, because we used to be able to attenuate all those in the 4-bay, whereas now it's kind of coming more directly into the facility.
So putting that back into operation is somewhere in the future? Or do you know how big a
We'll
problem
see
you got?
we'll see what we find. We're having discussions with the state engineer right now on doing some near-term improvements on the north side where that seepage was, some less expensive options that they're comfortable with, so that we can continue to evaluate. We would like to fill this after we repair these holes and just see what that did to the leakage, and take it step by step, because the long-term solution may be a little bit more expensive than what we're doing just in the short term. But this is a jurisdictional dam, so there is some risk to the facility. If there was some sort of a break, the facility, and there's some downstream residents too as you get closer to Highway 66. But we've had this leakage for 10 years. It has steadily gotten a little bit worse over that time period, but we'll see what we find as we continue to investigate.
Okay. Any questions? So your plan is to resolve the issues as you see them, and
Yep, we're working with a consultant in the state, dam engineer, so we're working as a team to try to figure out the best path forward, take it step by step, figure out what's going on with all the geotechnical information in the area.
this is not directly related to this, but I have to ask the question. We kept hearing about changing the capacity of the plant. Is that something that is kind of on the sideline, or any?
So the expansion project, so that has been delayed because of the cost escalation. So again, we had the original estimates from our consultant to expand Nelson Flanders. And the reason for that expansion, the driver, was really asset management. Wade Gaddis is another plant that we have that was built back in the early 80s that has structural issues and operational issues. So we're gonna, basically take that capacity, so build that plant at Nelson Flanders, because Nelson Flanders was always built with expansion in mind. So it was replacing existing infrastructure at Gaddis, bringing it to Nelson Flanders. Again, the original estimates were in the $50 million range back in 2019. Again, through what we've seen in the economy from 2020 to 2023, we were in design for that and saw it real time because we were doing that project delivery design build, so we had a contractor in the room with the consultant, the engineer. Costs increased, basically the same scope and project to $97 million. So it's similar percentages of what we were seeing on other projects. It's just this one is such a huge dollar amount, that percentage really ballooned. So Montgomery Tank, which is at the corner of North 53rd and Highway 66, was another parallel project we were wanting to take care of. We can still afford that project, so council kind of, we did a CIP amendment in November of last year to move a lot of the money from Nelson Flanders into Montgomery Tank to take care of that project first, see where we stand after we get that project completed, and see what additional funding we're gonna need for getting that Wade Gaddis capacity over to Nelson Flanders.
Is Wade Gaddis still usable?
Is it usable? It's
Still sitting
it's on
there.
the line. It's there.
Okay.
We do need to put some money into it to make sure we haven't operated that since 2011.
Yeah, but you wouldn't put money.
And we hadn't been putting money into it because the decision was made to put the capacity over at Nelson Flanders. So it's we're juggling a lot.
All right, all right.
And then Holly will talk about her project, the North St. Clair Pipeline Lining Project.
Yeah, so in addition to the forebay being down, I've taken down the North St. Vrain pipeline for a lining project. And this project, it's actually a fairly short section of pipeline, about 1,600 feet, and it's located near the intersection of Highways 36 and 66 near Lyons. It's actually a lining project instead of an open cut replacement project. And as you can see from this aerial, it's because there's just a lot of stuff that we would have to deal with. We'd have to deal with CDOT right away. We'd have to deal with the creek. We'd have to deal with ditches. We have property owners who have houses. We have large trees. We have potential endangered species. So there's just a lot of things that we would potentially have to deal with. And so that's why we did a lining project, which is an interior. It's an interior rehab. Next slide, please. So here's the design and the difference between kind of digging up, replacing all of the pipeline versus how we're doing it now. We have 3 different excavation sites, if you could click. So the great thing is that we only have 3 excavation sites. These are permanent pits as part of the project. We do have two temporary pits because we have some problems with the pipe that we figured out. We have to actually dig down, do an external repair. In one location, we're not able to do a robot internal repair at that location. There's another place where we have a 24-inch T. We have to actually cut that out, and I'll show you a slide or a picture of that excavation site and a couple more slides. But you're good. But as you can see from the previous slide, the whole idea is to really reduce the amount that we're actually disturbing in this area. So you're good. Next slide. So how do we know that this pipe is bad? Last year we actually we dug down in our mid pit, so the middle pit, that center pit, we cut a window into the pipe. We sent a robot camera upstream and downstream, and the goal was to figure out whether or not the lining would be a good alternative, as well as to try and find cracks and holes like you see on the right hand side. So we know that this pipe needs help, and that lining is hopefully going to help prevent things like on the very right hand side. So this was taken while the pipeline is down, and so that's just groundwater re-entering, basically water that whenever this pipeline was operating at 90 pounds, basically would have been just shooting out of the pipe. So once we took the pipeline down, the water that was exiting our pipe whenever it was under pressure and online just started coming back in. next slide, please. In addition to that interior inspection, we also have our property owners in this section of pipe. We've had 3 different leaks surface within the last few months. Nice ponding, pooling. You actually see some nice bubbling action there on the surface. So we know that this pipe really does have a lot of holes in it, and that the lining project is going to be really helpful for this section of pipe. Next slide. We've been doing this project since roughly the beginning of June. It's going to be about 3 months long. So hopefully, kind of like Joe was talking about, coming back and telling you about the forebay, in a few months, hopefully I'll be able to come back and give you a little more information as we progress through the project. Just a few slides to show that the size of the excavations our permanent excavations that we're dealing with, as well as just a look within those pits as well. What we're doing, the one with the yellow, that is actually one where we welded on a flange. That's one of our permanent pits. And so that is where either the liner is going to be coming in. Basically, we have the 3 pits, and the liners are going from the initial pit or the beginning pit to the middle pit, and then we have a second liner that's going from the middle pit to the final pit. We're not able to line the entire section at one time. We've got to do it in 2 sections because it is a 24-inch pipe, so there are limitations to the length that we can actually line at one time. And then the rightmost photograph is where we actually had to cut out a 24-inch T. We're not able to line through the T, so we had to cut out the T and put in a straight section of pipe. We haven't gotten that far on the project, but we are making progress, and hopefully next time I'll be able to come back and show you some pictures of our robot that's going to go in and grind down. We have plugs within we know that we have holes. They've been plugged in the past. The robot will go in and grind down those plugs. The robot will also go in and grout holes to prevent the water that's coming in now. It'll go in and grout those areas. Hopefully be able to give you some of those photos, as well as the lining actually being installed. And
So a few challenging projects hitting us at the same time. Just aging infrastructure.
What are the ramifications of this that we out of commission?
So again, operationally, without the forebay, it makes operations more difficult at the plant. We do have 3 other sources coming into the plant. The original thought was, why would we take this down during peak flow in the summertime? Well, we have all of our sources available in the summertime, whereas in the wintertime we don't.
Okay.
So that's why we are doing it now, just because we have some redundancies that we wouldn't have in the quote peak wintertime period. But yeah, just makes things a little bit more operationally challenging at the treatment facility. But we have some good operators, and we've changed some programming around too for how we're operating right now. And we're using some Highland ditch that we haven't used, and those pumps, and we've made some improvements to that system, a new flow meter, which is working really well for giving us good flow data. So there's been some positives that have come out of this. Learned good learning experiences.
So you were gonna come back on another date?
Yeah.
When you're,
Sure.
you got a date in mind?
I think towards the end of summer would probably be best, when we are done with the North St. Brain project, and we should really know where we're at, what the path forward is on the forebay at that point too. And I can also hopefully give you a good update on Price Park.
You got a lot of good things coming the end of the summer.
So I think this summer we're gonna be
Make it
busy.
happen.
We're gonna be busy.
Sign my vacation.
Well,
Yeah, no. So towards the end of the summer.
Okay.
Probably that August, September time frame probably would be
All right.
best.
any questions? Dan, any questions? There.
Roger, I'm good, thank you.
When you coming back to Longmont, Dan? You gonna be up there all summer? No, don't worry about it. Okay. Anything else? All right. So Hope, you wanna
Sure, I can do it in 5 minutes. I can try.
give it a go?
All right. So I just wanted to come and update you guys that we had our first annual, hopefully it's an annual thing, Longmont Water Fair. So Heather's gonna pull up my slides.
Is this it? This is.
No, it's, that's the one pager, the
Oh, shoot.
presentation, yeah. That's okay, I'll start talking.
Okay.
So, we basically decided to host something similar to the water festival that we used to have with the 5th grade in the school district. But we wanted to make it a community-wide event open to intergenerational folks. And aligned with the city's commitment for responsible water management and stewardship, we wanted to create something that educates the community about where our water comes from, where it goes, and why we should care. So our main goal is to, like I said, an intergenerational event based on the statewide water education action plan and the City of Longmont's water efficiency plan. We also really wanted to get feedback on our efficiency plan update, and I wanted to try something new, and by not doing like a community open house and kind of getting it as like a family event and then getting folks who are already at that family event to give us feedback on our update. We also wanted this to be not a regular resource fair. We wanted it to be focused on, it's not in there, Heather, I sent it to you,
Oh, shoot.
email,
Sorry.
no worries. Focused on hands-on, kinesthetic, and art-focused learning. So we integrated some local artists and performances, including an Aztecia water blessing, local interpretive dancing, and African drumming. And again, our main objective is to educate attendees about global water, Colorado water, Longmont water, and then water conservation and how folks can interact with water in a more efficient way. So our main goals, the increased knowledge of local water sources, watersheds, and their relationships. I have a photo, so I'm gonna keep talking, but I do want you guys to see it. Yeah, no, you're good, Heather, no worries. And then on this one pager, we've got our short-term and outcomes, the increased knowledge of local water sources, their relationships, those types of things. And then on this third page is the learning objectives that we identified as a team. It's, scroll down. It's not that one. Here, let me,
Hold on 1 second.
yeah, I'll just send it to her.
Here's the presentation, I found it.
Okay, thank you so much. So we identified a handful of learning objectives and then strategically selected partners to educate the attendees on each station that those handful of learning objectives.
Hold on, sorry.
You're good.
I gotta share so Jan can see. Okay.
And our theme was water's journey from mountain to home. Here are some images about, the Aztecia dancing and the water blessing, really hands-on kinesthetic learning. We've got a watershed example on the bottom left down there, and then the bottom right is my favorite. the CBT system. So the kids are carrying water through the Alva Tunnel. So that's pretty cool. Next couple slides. Our short-term outcome, increased knowledge of local water sources, watersheds, and their relationships. We had a giant interactive mural of the St. Vrain watershed where folks can draw what they think live in the watershed and be a part of, actively be in the watershed. Next slide. Increased knowledge of human behaviors impacting local water health and conservation. Very interactive models. We had Keep It Clean Partnership and the City of Longmont Floodplain Management. That was their slide, or the station. Increased social capital, really wanting to get folks together in one place. One of the highlights is that we had between 400 and 500 people attend the event, which is double what we expected. So definitely achieved that social capital goal. Increased time at local watersheds. We held the event at Dickens Farm Nature Area, so the kids got to get right down into the water. It was high flow, so we didn't let them get in the water, but we let them look at it. Increased knowledge of how water is valued across vocations and cultures. We really wanted, you can go to the next one, we really wanted folks to understand that water is a global phenomenon that connects us all. So how other cultures value and participate in water in their cultures is an important goal. We can blaze over these because they're in our one-pager. But these are just all of our event partners that we have there. Next couple slides, we'll just skip over these. Back one, so sorry. Everything was translated, and we had Spanish interpreters live at the event, so if any families needed language justice assistance, we had those there that they could follow them around to each station. I hired grassroots art organizers to help me plan it, so it was really grassroots and really fueled by community and cultural influencers, which is really special, and I think why it was such a success of an event. One of the cool things that we did was we did some data collection before the water fair. So our 2 critical water issues we wanted each person to walk away knowing was what percentage of Earth's fresh water is available for use, and what watershed do we live in. And the light blue is what folks answered in April at Earth Day, and then the dark blue is how folks answered correctly after the water fair. So we can see that our education impacts were successful. These are just highlights, like I mentioned, between 400 and 500 attendees, all the languages spoken by family, mostly English and Spanish, but we also had Russian, Hebrew, Mandarin, and Portuguese speakers. The average age of kid there was age 7, and we created these scavenger hunts for folks. Each family got a scavenger hunt when they came in, and like I said, each station had a learning objective, so they were able to track their learning objectives through the scavenger hunt. And then the last page of the survey, it's also highlighted on the back of this one pager, was where we collected data. So what percentage of fresh water is available for use, what watershed do we live in, and then other demographic information, which is how we got the average age and which languages they speak. And 68% of attendees contributed to this survey. So that's huge.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay.
That definitely happened.
So 68% contributed to the survey, which is extremely higher than most participation in public surveys.
You know, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And then here are just some highlight photos. One of the cool things and I just wanted to highlight the partnership that we can have when we collaborate with art and science. I just feel like it's much more impactful. And so the top left is the sculpture of how 115 gallons, which is the gross gallons per capita per day in Longmont, so people can actually visualize that. We've got our artists, our Aztecia water blessing, and then the 2 dot matrix are what I collected at my station just for our efficiency master plan update on what types of rebates folks most want to see, and then what type of landscapes they would like us to pursue most. And as you can see, well, we got a wide range of feedback on our rebates, which is great, but the landscape choice was a clear landslide winner for xeriscape, water-wise landscaping. So now we know that when we decide to update our design standards and codes, that the public is in favor of that.
What day was this?
This was June 9th, last weekend, 2 weekends ago.
And where was it?
It was at Dickens Farm Nature Area. I didn't tell you guys before because the permit didn't get approved until like the week of. So I was slightly scared it wasn't going to happen all the way up until like the Monday that it happened. So.
She was not very fun to be around in the office.
So,
You could have told us and said you like promises.
And I was a little it was a little stressful, but I feel like this is a testament to the success of not taking no.
well, I mean, it's also, I mean, you had double the attendance that you expected while not really advertising that it was.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing some community outreach, but I had to be extra careful.
So it was.
Because you didn't have a permit, right? I'm just trying to get the whole story here.
But still really good attendance.
But it's fantastic, right?
Yeah, no.
So like,
was,
if it's annual and next year we have the permit in place a little sooner, then and you advertise it, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
plan for loads more people.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, like I said, it was double what we expected it to be, and it didn't feel crowded. A lot of the feedback, we asked for a lot of feedback, and some of the feedback was like, even though there was so many people there, it didn't feel crowded, because we were outside and we were in nature, and I think people were cycling through pretty quickly, so it was good.
Were you happy with the outcome?
Yeah, it was better than I ever could have imagined it to be. And honestly, I attest that to partnering with the local artists to help me plan it, because they were really, if I had planned it, it would have been like a seminar with like slides and maps. But like this was so great, you know, with the kids and the hula hoops, and like everything was really hands-on, and I think the kids learned a lot, so it was super fun.
Okay, great event.
Yeah, thanks. I'll invite you next time.
That'd be cool.
All right, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Hope? Good job, Hope.
Thank you.
It's 10 after 5, just to.
Yeah, you want to, should we skip the Windy Gap Farming
Yeah.
Project update?
Bring that next time.
All right. And I think that pretty much covers it, does it not?
I just wanted to note the July meeting, we may cancel that. We don't have any action items yet, and that's only 3 weeks away, so won't guarantee.
Well, we got the cash in lieu adjustment. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
big
that's-
deal, so
we're-
why don't we
we're
take
there.
a month off? You know, I mean, that's a big win.
It is.
Okay. Well, you'll let us know. if
We'll let you know. I
Okay.
just wanted to give you a heads up.
Anybody else have any comments before we end? Dan, anything else?
He's good.
All right, meeting's adjourned.